Live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 125. This is Joy News Prime with me, Emefa Apawu. In the headlines, signed, sealed and delivered, Ghana has secured the long-awaited $3 billion financial support from the International Monetary Fund. Also, Parliament expected to declare seat of Asin North vacant as Supreme Court declares as null and void the election and swearing in of James Jachikwesing as Member of Parliament. We have details as the opposition NDC insists the matter is far from over. We'll also tell you about how investigative journalist Anas Arimiyahu Anas has been directed to allow former GFA boss Kwesi Nyantakyi to inspect his face in chambers before he testifies each time. And much later in Nigeria, PDP candidate Atiku Abubakar urges President Akufo Addo and other African leaders to boycott the inauguration of Bola Ahmed Tinbu. Many thanks for choosing us. We are also live on Facebook and our YouTube channels on myjoyonline.com. Now, in our very first story in this package has been about 10 months of lobbying amidst uncertainties, but the wait is finally over because it's official. The Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund has finally approved Ghana's request for a $3 billion bailout. The approval was signed after an emergency sitting earlier today in Washington, D.C. in the USA. In the coming hours, the IMF is expected to issue a press statement giving more details about the approval. Well, Joy News is learning that government has also requested the IMF to make public the full details of the agreement and the conditionalities attached. Here's Minister of State at the Finance Ministry, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam.
We are committed to transparency. As a result of this, the government has instructed the IMF to publish all the documents. Once the approval has been given, the IMF must be publishing the documents. So all the documents are going to be available for the public to continue to scrutinize and also to help with monitoring. Public scrutiny is important because we are supposed to implement a number of measures, and to the extent that the public know what those measures are.
Well, my colleague Isaac Kofi Minta is with our data and research team. He joins me in studio with more on this particular good news. Let's, Kofi, welcome. Good to see you this evening. We know the total amount involved is $3 billion, but tell us about the characteristics. What are we to expect? What are the details of all this?
So finally, Ghana's economy has moved from the OPD to the ICU, ready for treatment. But we know there are some characteristics of this program. It's an ECF. You know, it's an extended credit facility program which will last for 3 years. And we are lucky for us, right after we got the approval, we've been given the go-ahead to do our first withdrawal or first tranche. Okay. Now, we know that this is going to be a 0%, a loan. So it means we're not going to pay any interest on it. But we also know that for us to pay, we are supposed to pay within a span of 10 years. And then also we have a grace period of about 5.5 years. But one thing we also know is that the IMF has asked, the Finance Ministry and then the Bank of Ghana to do certain things. The first thing is that they must sign an MOU to not, for Bank of Ghana not to finance anything from the Finance Ministry. So 0% financing going forward in 2020 this year.
Okay, that's interesting. We're hoping to see when that first tranche hits the account. I'm told it's going to be divided into two, 300 first and then the next 300. Do we have any timelines? We're told by Friday and then on Monday.
Exactly, so 17th and I think 19th. Okay. So by the end of this, we are supposed to have 600 million. And then also by the end of this year, we are expecting $1.2 billion, dollars. It means that, the second tranche will also be around 600 billion. That one will come in 300, the same thing. But after every 6 months, when we review this program, we'll have access to about $340 million. This is conditional on we meeting certain conditions. If we do not meet the conditions, come on, we won't get the monies.
Well, we'll talk about some of the conditions and whether we are able to meet it, because we've heard economists say we shouldn't pop the champagne just yet. But the IMF has been answering some key questions that is likely to come up. Maybe you can take us through it and then we can give us what the possible answers could be.
Well, so first, a lot of Ghanaians will be asking, so we have $3 billion. So what's in for me? So how is it going to help our economy? They've been answering this question. So first thing, when the money comes in, what happens is that this is a balance of payment support. So it means right from the onset, your local currency is going to get some strength against, major trading currencies like the dollar and the euro. So the dollar, the CD will stand tall against the dollar for some time. And when this happens, it means that we're going to spend less money to import, refined crude. Those who are importing to will not pay so many, duties. And this will trickle down to the ordinary person who is expecting that, the price of bread and common kinky will go down as a result of this new initiative. Yeah.
Well, but I'm sure you've been finding out also the fear is that we are going to have new taxes. But let's talk about what the outlines are, how the program will bring back our economy to life.
So IMF wants the central bank to do one thing, or government to do one thing, that they should tackle, public financing. So one thing we must do is to make sure that, just like I said, Bank of Ghana must stop financing the finance ministry. So 0%. So first, they know that the first thing the IMF want to do is to make sure our inflation drops from the 41% down to a very reasonable level. The cedi stands tall against the dollar. And then also, probably after monetary policy tightening, we are going to see some relief for businesses when they are going to borrow from banks. And then also IMF is so concerned about the poor, because once we start tightening the economy, it's going to affect the most vulnerable in the society. So they listed 3 things that they must do. 1, government must focus on the LEAP program. That's first thing. And then also we know there have been a lot of stories about the NHIS. IMF is saying that once the program starts, the poor, education and health, so make sure you also strengthen the NHIS and some other conditions that they've been stating on their website.
But focus on LEAP, what exactly then are we expecting? Are we going to increase, decrease? What exactly are we
So 2023 budgets, in the appendix, government has actually increased the allocation that they are going to give to LEAP. LEAP has been financing by the World Bank and the Bank of Ghana, the central bank as well. So they've actually increased the allocation that will be given to LEAP in 2023. And then we are hoping that some of these things will offset the kind of impact that will have on the very poor in the society.
Okay, I'd like to keep you long here, but we'll have to leave it here for now. And subsequently, we'll get more answers from you. Great job there. Thank you so much. That's my colleague, Isaac Kofi Minta, joining us from our research desk, giving us all the breakdown when it comes to this particular 3 billion facility that we are just going to receive from the IMF. But an air of caution looms amidst the anticipation. Instead of jubilation, Professor of Finance at the University of Ghana, Professor Godfred Bokping, is cautioning businesses and individuals to prepare themselves for a surge in taxes.
There are targets that we have to meet every 6 months of the program review. Part of the target may include increasing our tax to GDP revenue, tax to GDP ratio to, let's say, 18%. Okay, the strategy in increasing the tax revenue could impact negatively businesses if we don't adopt optimal tax handles. Then, so that is effect. Okay, and then also, in as much as I agree and consistent with our Vice President when he said that macroeconomic stability is like fresh air. Macroeconomic stability is not an end in itself. It's only a means to an end. So what then is important is that how do we complement gains from the IMF short-term usually by the necessary governance, productivity enhancing reforms that Ghana needs to do.
Well, that's the Professor Godfred Bokping there. We can now hear from Information Minister Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah speaking to my colleague Evans Mensah a while ago on Top Story.
Commencing engagement with the fund in pursuit of a balance of payment support program to support Ghana's economic, may I say, recovery program that we have put together. We call it the PCPEG, the Post-Crisis Program for Economic Growth. And what we needed was a balance of payment support dimension to this broader program. I think before the end of the year, we successfully negotiated the staff level agreement And before the end of March, the target was to complete the prior actions, which we successfully did. But we needed external parties to provide financing assurances to the board of the fund, which financing assurances came through in the last about a week or so. And so the board had the opportunity to consider the financing assurances, the prior actions, and then the SLA that we had signed. And when they were comfortable with it all, in the words of the managing director in a statement I think she issued a few days ago, they consider it a strong program that lays the foundation for recovery. And therefore, they have gone ahead to do what they have to do. I think in the coming hours, the fund will do the formal announcements and provide the details and publish all of the matters that come with it. We also have to correct the impression that this is overdue or has been waited for a long time. The truth is that I think at every point in time when it was mentioned that we intended to meet a particular timeline, the view was that it could never be met. Remember the December timeline, the view was that it couldn't be met. It was met. The March timeline, the view was that it couldn't be met. We finished our prior actions, and then the external assurances rather came in April and is taking place. And I think within 10 or so months, it is not as though it is overly delayed. But now that the board has approved, I think in the shortest possible time, the first disbursements would have to start taking place. And then the program monitoring will also go on to ensure that we are meeting all of the other targets that will be spelled out in what is published later today, and then subsequent disbursements will take place. But I think it's also very important to mention that the IMF deal is not the solution to all our economic challenges. As we said in July last year, it is one of the pillars that are required to function for the entire economic recovery program of the PCPEG to take place. And there's a lot more that all of us need to do as an economy to ensure that that recovery comes through.
That's Information Minister Kojo Nkrumah a while ago. I'll take you shortly to Nigeria, where spokesperson for Atiku Abubakar is asking President Akufo-Addo and other African leaders to boycott the inauguration ceremony of Bola Ahmed Tinbu. I'll take you shortly there. But first, Parliament is expected to declare the seat of Asin North vacant as the Supreme Court has declared as null and void the election and swearing in of James Jachikwesing as Member of Parliament. The court, presided by Justice Jones Dutse, also ruled that the Electoral Commission acted unconstitutionally when it allowed Mr. Kwesing to contest the polls without seeing evidence that he has renounced his Canadian citizenship. The opposition NDC, however, holds the view that the matter is far from over. Legal Affairs correspondent Joseph Akable, he was in court all day covering a number of issues in court, and he has filed this report.
James Jachikwesing's eligibility as a Member of Parliament has been in contention since he won the 2020 December parliamentary elections. The matter has gone to the High Court, the Court of Appeal. There's an aspect of it that is also at the High Court in terms of a criminal matter. But some finality has been brought to it, as the Supreme Court has by unanimous decision ruled that he was not eligible to contest the 2020 polls. The court, presided over by Justice Jones Dutse, also held that the Electoral Commission acted unconstitutionally when it allowed him to contest the parliamentary polls without proof of renunciation of his Canadian citizenship. The court then issued an order asking Parliament to expunge James Jachikwesing's name from its records as a Member of Parliament. And so this is the decision of the Supreme Court, and lawyers for Michael Ankuman Infan, led by Frank Davis, are excited by this decision.
We have to protect the sanctity of the Constitution, and we are gratified that the law lords, all the 7 of them, have agreed unanimously with the position we have held all along, that at all times material, James Jachikwesing was not qualified under the dictates of the Constitution of the Republic to have contested as a Member of Parliament for the Asin North constituency. It's been a long road. You can all attest to the number of times we have paraded the court premises. But today, finally, the judgment has been handed, and we have a clear indication as to what the provision on dual citizenship is in respect of a contest for Member of Parliament.
I mean, what do you expect to happen practically going forward? The court interestingly gave an order that his name should be expunged from the records of Parliament.
Of course, but that is a necessary consequence of the beliefs that we sought in the Supreme Court. If he wasn't qualified to have contested as a Member of Parliament, of course, the necessary inference is that whatever happened was null and void and of no legal effect whatsoever. So Parliament cannot still keep his name on their books. It's a necessary consequence, but of course the order has to be drawn and served on the Speaker, and his name will have to be expunged. That is the constitutional injunction on the EC. So my client is not looking forward to anything. The EC will have to comply. Insofar as that seat now remains vacant, the EC has to conduct elections in that constituency. So it is not for my client to be looking forward to. It is for the EC to comply with the orders of the Supreme Court. And the constitutional injunction is that if a seat is vacant, you organize fresh elections.
And so the lawyers expect the orders of the court to be drawn up and served on Parliament, and that the Speaker will declare the seat vacant, after which they expect the Electoral Commission to proceed to organize primaries. For joining us from the Supreme Court, my name is Joseph Akable.
Well, the deposed MP himself, James Jachikwesin, has been speaking. He's actually expressed his disappointment in the decision of the Supreme Court to get his records expunged as a member of Parliament for Asin North. A statement he issued a while ago reads, I'll take you to that statement. It says, this morning, the Supreme Court, by unanimous decision, ordered the Parliament of Ghana to expunge my name from its records as a member of Parliament. The court ruled that the Electoral Commission acted unconstitutionally in allowing me to contest the 2020 parliamentary elections without proof that I had denounced my Canadian citizenship at the time I filed my nomination in October 2020 to contest the parliamentary elections in the Asin North constituency. He goes on to say that, in fact, the EC inspected my renunciation certificate in November 2020, and then prior to allowing me to contest the elections. Thus, I was duly qualified to run according to the EC's regulations, which the law presumes to be regular. Yet, the court holds that I should have offered this proof to the EC at the time of filing for my nomination, and then applies the holding retrospectively to disqualify me. And then it is a matter of public record that I filed for the renunciation of my Canadian citizenship in December 2019. It is also a matter of record that I left Canada in February 2020. It is also a matter of record that as soon as I applied for renunciation of my Canadian citizenship and left Canada, I lost all the rights of Canadian citizenship. It is also a matter of record that I picked up my renunciation certificate from the Canadian Embassy in Accra in November 2020. It then concludes by saying it is also a matter of public record that Canadian law does not say I owe allegiance to Canada even after filing for renunciation. In fact, Canadian law is unequivocal that this avowal of allegiance is subjective and can be done at any time, including immediately after swearing the oath of citizenship. Thus, under Canadian law, I owed no allegiance to Canada at all material times. So that's the statement from James Jachikwesin just a while ago, expressing his disappointment in that Supreme Court ruling. We'll be hearing shortly also from the minority. So amongst others, he feels that that Supreme Court ruling ought not have been the situation, and he does not say whether there will be a review of this particular issue. But let me take you to the minority. We'll also be hearing from the party on this. So the minority in Parliament also issued a statement moments ago and is signed by the minority leader, Atiku. And for that statement, it goes on to say the minority caucus has become aware of the Supreme Court's decision invalidating the nomination, election, and subsequent swearing in of Honorable James Jachikwesin, Member of Parliament for Asin North, as being unconstitutional and of no legal effect, and subsequently directing Parliament to expunge his name from its records. It is important to place on record that as at the time of his election, James Jachikwesin was not a dual citizen. Neither was he a dual citizen as at the time he took the oath of office as a Member of Parliament. The intention of the framers of Ghana's constitution is not to allow a dual citizen to perform the functions of a Member of Parliament. It is therefore baffling that the Supreme Court could direct the removal of Parliament of such a person who has been duly elected as a Member of Parliament. While we are yet to study the reasoning of the court in making its decision, it appears to be a slap in the face of our democracy and the rule of law. We shall inform the public of our position upon reviewing the reasoning of the court in arriving at its decision. We urge our rank and file to be calm while we pursue all legal avenues to ensure that justice is served. So that's a statement from the minority, their immediate reaction to that Supreme Court ruling. But as it were, we are told that all these issues were brought before the Supreme Court and they still went ahead to give that ruling. Don't forget, with detailed discussion will come up shortly or later on at 9 p.m. right here on this channel on PM Express before we go on to host Stoneboy. So you get all the reactions right here on PM Express. You ought to stay with us. Now, I'll take you back to the court where founder of Defunct Capital Bank, William Atiku Abubakar, has been handed up until July 4 to liquidate his assets and refund 55 million cedis to the state. Justice Eric Chebafo says this is to ensure that Mr. Essien is given a fair chance to secure his freedom. The businessman risks possible jail term as he has breached the terms of an agreement he reached with the state to refund 90 million cedis. To the state. He has so far paid 35 million cedis. Joseph Akable, our legal affairs correspondent, now joins me via Zoom with further details of this. Quite a packed day for you, Joseph, in court. So first, we know that the court previously indicated renegotiation was not an option. What then changed?
Well, Emefa, Justice Eric Chebafo did indicate that in terms of the documents that have been filed, there are parts of the documents that makes reference to a certain agreement that one of Mr. Essien's companies, specifically Swiss Essien Investment Holdings, had entered into an agreement with another international company to have the company buy some of its assets. And so Justice Chebafo says that amount that they are looking to come in is about $300,000. And so he thinks that it's only fair that he be given the opportunity, because once the Attorney General through the Deputy AG moves that application, it will mean that you have little choice but to proceed to rule on it, and it seems likely to be the imposition of the sentence. And that is what he says. He just wants to act fairly and give him more time to see whether he's able to liquidate the assets as he has attached the agreement he intends to do.
I'm curious, was the AG satisfied with this arrangement, knowing his previous position on this matter?
Deputy Attorney General Alfred Tuayebua says their main contention is to point out to the court that the amount that's outstanding is 55 million cedis, and what he intends to obtain from the sale of his assets is just $300,000, and at a rate of 12 cedis, that comes to just around 5 million cedis. And so he doesn't think that it is anywhere close. And so if they are giving him more time, then it means that he should be coming with the understanding that he's going to cough out the amount of 55 million cedis. We can hear from Deputy AG Alfred Tuayebua.
Made it clear to the court that the amount outstanding is 55 million Ghana cedis. And since today the court, in its own wisdom, has granted the convict up to the end of June, it's our expectation that when we come back in June, that amount must be paid, because that amount has become payable in lieu of the default on the part of the convict. Their thinking will be that they may want to pay the 20 million. But if you look at section 35(7), the language is very simple. If you default in the payment, the outstanding amount becomes payable. So we are looking at the amount left with 55 billion Ghana cedis being paid on or before the next date. Of course, we are always at the mercy of the court. We are sticking to the law, and we are all servants of the law. And the law says that if a convict defaults, the outstanding sum becomes payable. So we are insisting on that. Yes, looking at the document that he has exhibited, you realize that if you add the first amount that he's expecting, which is about $300,000, it will not be up to 4 million Ghana cedis. Maybe now that he's been given a special grace by the court up to the end of June, he'll be able to gather the resources and then pay everything. But looking at what we have in the document that he has, the agreement that he has with that company, written that he cannot pay the 55 million Ghana cedis, but maybe he may have other options.
Well, from Ghana, let me take you straight now to Nigeria, where the People's Democratic Party, PDP, there in Nigeria, is asking President Akufo-Addo to turn down any invitation requesting his presence at the swearing-in ceremony for Nigeria's President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinbu. The PDP is amongst the two opposition political parties asking Superior Court in Nigeria to annul this year's election with the country's third force, the Labour Party, adding that Bola Tinbu must not be president of Africa's most populous nation. Well, leadership of Nigeria's opposition party, PDP, have been speaking to my colleague Blessed Soga, who is in Abuja for us, monitoring these developments ahead of the transition in Nigeria. Well, thankfully, Blessed joins us via Zoom as well. Blessed, let's talk about the particular reasons being given by these opposition parties who are up in arms against Tinubu's victory.
Well, a number of them, but all of them boil down to the same points, that they do not believe that Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the president-elect of the Republic of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. In fact, I was just speaking to the spokesperson for Mr. Atiku Abubakar, who described him, instead of president-elect, they are now referring to him as president-elect. Because the belief of these two opposition political parties is that at the end of the day, they believe that the court will ask for perhaps a rerun or declare as null and void the decision by the INEC of Nigeria to declare Bola Tinubu as the winner of the February's election here in Nigeria. It's the reason for which you have the Labour Party, which appears to be the emerging third force. Well, many say they are just an offspring of the PDP. So it goes without saying that the PDP will also have some concerns about the entire process itself. Is the reason for which these two opposition parties have been in court making that argument and asking Nigeria's Court of Appeal to try and reason with them for either a rerun and primarily the demand for Bola Tinubu's victory to be annulled. This is coming at a time where, of course, we've seen some other international organizations, our partners, the BBC, for instance, have put out an investigative piece reporting that there are some pieces of evidence connecting the dots that some sort of anomalies occurred during the February election, a reason for which many within the base of the PDP and the Labour Party believe that they have a strong case going to court this week. Of course, the Labour Party had their turn today. Surprisingly, there are some developments that we'll talk about later.
Okay.
But tomorrow will be the turn of the People's Democratic Party, which is the PDP, and they are hoping to have their day in court, getting the court to see reason why Bola Ahmed Tinubu should not.
I'm interested in proceedings today. Thankfully, the spokesperson for Atiku Abubakar also joins us. But let me quickly find out, you were in court trying to, find out proceedings and also to gauge the mood in Abuja as you were there. Let's talk about proceedings today. I know that there's been some adjournment amongst others, and you've been mentioning that others will have their day in court tomorrow going forward. Let's talk about it. Proceedings, how has it been so far?
It's been a lot of drama, I must put across. This is Africa's most populous nation, so you'd expect that there's a lot of anxiety and expectations from the base of all these opposition political parties going to court and asking the court to overturn the results. But within the Labour Party, for instance, there are some developments that triggered a lot of eyebrows in court today, when, of course, the chairperson and the direct representative of the Peter Obi campaign had some exchanges not so pleasant in court today, fighting over a position. Many say it's part of the power jostlings within this third force that has emerged in Nigeria's political scene. But beyond that as well, the demand of the Labour Party has been simple: to forcefully make that case again today in court. But surprisingly, the Court of Appeal says they may not recognize the chairpersons of the party. They would rather recognize Peter Obi, who was a front runner in the elections. And this is set to bring about some interesting developments in the coming days. But the PDP also has some set of facts which they believe, when presented to the court tomorrow, it will further give boost to their demands that indeed something went wrong, and that Bola Ahmed Tinubu should not be the president of the republic. They've, in fact, gone ahead to trigger a West African conversation, or some may say a continental conversation. They're now saying that based on what's happening within Nigeria, countries such as Ghana should not look up. So President Akufo-Addo, for instance, should not be at the Jubilee House, receive an invite from the Tinbu team, and make his way to Abuja to celebrate to the Nigerian people when they are having that swearing-in ceremony. They want a total blackout from all African leaders, especially for Ghana. They are very particular about Ghana because of President Akufo-Addo and this nice relations Ghana and Nigeria have enjoyed over the years. So they are watching the space and asking all African leaders to send that signal to Bola Tinubu, the APC, and all other political actors within Nigeria, that until the court processes are done with, they would not interfere with what's happening within the country. Okay.
Well, I'd like to stay with you a while longer and hear all about your trip to Abuja. But let me bring in quickly the spokesperson for Atiku Abubakar, who doubles as the governorship candidate for Ogun State, Segun Showunmi. Thank you so much for joining us here on Joy News. So let me first find out, my colleague has been telling me about this request that you're making of not just President Akufo-Addo, but other African leaders not to attend or participate in the inauguration ceremony of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. First off, let me find out, have you done giving an official, notification to these presidents that you're hoping will not attend?
No, we haven't done that. The first opportunity to have that conversation was with Joy News.com looking for interview today. And I had posited that Africa has come of age and they need to have a peer review mechanism that says to the world, and look, we're capable of taking some strong decisions on our own. And I have also said that one of the strongest decisions we can send to the world that we're matured enough to take decisions on the democracy in Africa is for the Africans themselves not to pussyfoot on important issues. And that one of the best ways to do that is to say, that election that everyone is quarreling about in Nigeria, we hear what the opposition is saying, we hear what young people in Nigeria is saying, we recognize the territorial integrity and all that, but can we just wait out all this fancy endorsement until you finish your case in court? So if you choose to go ahead and inaugurate, please forgive us, we wouldn't be able to come for now, but down the road, when your Supreme Court is done with the issues, then we can then say, okay, we have. The reason being that there has to be some way that we can then send a signal to ourselves, Nigeria, Ghana, all of the other countries, that the Africa as a body, leaders that are practicing democracy, stable democracies like that of Ghana, will not look away or play the ostrich or enable what everybody is saying is not right.
Okay, but how many countries, how many African leaders in particular are you targeting? I see that you have your eyes on Ghana in particular, but
Ghana is the oldest independent nation here, and it has a great role to be the epitome of civil rights, of democracy, of freedom of choice, and all of that. And we're using Ghana as a lead to other African nations, especially those of them that are in democracy. And you know that there's a symbiotic relationship between Ghana and Nigeria. We're both Anglophones, we both practice democracy, we both believe in timed elections, we also believe in the rule of law, we believe in the sanctity of the judiciary, we believe in the right of the people as enshrined in the United Nations Charter for them to choose, and we believe in deepening democracy.
But so this is a country you've talked about and giving us all the accolades in terms of our belief in democracy. There's a system that has been triggered in your country. Your apex court has been asked to set this particular inauguration aside and take a look at the substantive case. That has not been done. How then do you drawing in other African countries not to participate in an event that a sovereign state, for instance, is going to organize? He was duly elected. We had the National Election Commission electing him. You are in court now on this matter. Why won't we finish the whole process before you start issuing such directives to other African countries?
Well, if you are going to come to the international space as a matured continent in democracy, you must also be able to show that you are responsive and responsible to be able to take some actions here that doesn't get dictated from outside. And not coming for the inauguration doesn't destroy anything. There are always diplomatic niceties to say we're busy, and then everybody gets to smell the coffee. And the import of that is that nations in Africa will begin to make sure that their democratic process will have integrity, and the threshold of integrity will be respected.
Okay.
Any election that takes place in Africa, where you see that people's wishes are being suppressed, people are being gaslighted, you're seeing that tribal and religious issues have become a big deal there, and you're seeing that they're clutching for straws for legitimacy, then it is reasonable for opposition parties, like the People's Democratic Party, to say, hey, African leaders, stay away.
Okay.
They're not obliged to obey, but at least we have told them what our minimum expectation will be.
Well, I want to find out also, is it that the process that has been triggered, which is currently at your apex court, Atiku Abubakar and his team do not trust this particular process that is currently underway?
The process will more than likely not be exhausted before the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
And that's where the double jeopardy is. If you come and say, kumbaya with them today, and in a couple of weeks' time, when they get thrown away, what are you going to do? You're going to come and say another kumbaya? That's a bit of diplomatic hypocrisy. So what we're saying is that you can hold on to your congratulatory message that you're coming to show camaraderie, and you can say in a nice way that, look, all of the information available to us, I've heard from your program that you got material from BBC, your sister station, and your support stations, who have also thrown in a lot of issues. You can say, okay, we'll see you when you are done with your Supreme Court issues. But for now, let's just say we're busy in Ghana.
Okay, but clarify for me. I know you've been interacting with my colleague earlier, who tells us that some of your party members are threatening to relocate to Ghana. Am I correct? I'm referring to your former chairman, for instance. He's reportedly reconciled with Tinbu. So why not let sleeping dogs then lie?
No, I'm not exactly aware that he made up his mind on where he was going to relocate to.
But he's reconciled. He's reconciled with Tinbu. Then why won't you just let sleeping dogs lie?
He is not reconciled with Tinbu. You're talking about Chief Olabode, Deputy National Chairman. What Chief Olabode said is that elders within that particular state and within that particular tribe are reaching out to themselves to say, okay, let's try and do all of this. And he has said to them, it's too early.
Okay.
Just like what we're asking Ghana and all the other nations to do. It's too early to throw in the congratulations. We'll wait until these cases are rested in court. If they affirm him, then okay, it will be good to congratulate him and move on. If they don't affirm him, then we can then, congratulate the next person. But what I'm saying to you is that there has to come a time when we don't wait for America to come and tell us they're going to put sanctions. We don't have to wait for England all the time. After all of these years, the modern continent is matured enough, is educated enough, is sophisticated enough to be able to say, we will now begin to use some peer review and some punishment and some action and some diplomatic consequences to force all the other Africans to run democracy the way it should be run and to improve democracy. Basically, that's what we're saying.
Well, Shego, in wrapping up with you, I know the PDP will take your turn in court tomorrow. Let's talk briefly about your specific demands from the court.
First of all, we're saying very clearly that he had no eligibility.
Okay.
Was not even eligible. Then we're saying that there's an issue with the double nomination of the vice presidential candidate in the joint ticket, which automatically nullifies it. We're saying that there are issues with the presidential candidate and his double nationality, just like what I heard from your news today, where one of your parliamentarians had been removed or expunged and expunged and deleted because he has double nationality. That's what the Supreme Court has said. There's that issue with them as well, with their Guinean relationship, passports and that of Nigeria. We're saying that on the count, they didn't win. We're saying that based on the regulations and the rules of engagement that was produced before the election body, INEC, did not comply. We're saying that we won in actual fact when the numbers are put together, and we're saying that we should be declared, in which the margin of lead we're saying is too little, and therefore in the worst case scenario, a runoff can be done. Everything we're saying is to the fact that an election did not take place and the result could not have been gotten, and they could not have done the declaration. That's why we always choose to call him President-select and not President-elect, because you can't do such, disrespect to your rules and regulations and expect everybody to just accept it.
Okay. Well, but this runoff that you talk about, Segun, if there were to be a runoff, at least we followed the results amongst others. There are those who are of the view that even if there's a runoff, Atiku will not be the next option. We know about the Labour Party. What do you say to such people?
No, that's not true. If you look at the result, it says first and second. Runoff is always between the first and the second. At best, we'll see how that is played out. We're well aware of what our case is. We're a little bit cautious not to, demarcate the Labour Party, because we consider it to be the offshoot from our party, and we're treating it with a bit of kid's glove. But when we get into the box and the arena, we need to show evidence that we won. We'll show enough evidence that we won, and we won fair and square.
Okay. And a direct question, really. This is a very final one. Does Atiku Abubakar trust in Nigeria's judicial process?
We have no choice. Every country deals with the shenanigans of, corruption and all of the interferences, some of the rumors and all that. But Atiku has shown over the years that he's one of those men who believe in judiciary, and he has gone to court more than most people. A lot of the things that people enjoy in Nigeria today, for instance, that the presidency is a joint ticket between the president and vice president, that's as a result of court cases that Atiku took all the way to the Supreme Court. And therefore, I think that he has shown himself as a Democrat. He has acted as a Democrat. He has never used any indecorous language or overacted language. Therefore, I would say that, yes, we believe in the rule of law. We trust the judiciary. We're just hoping that our friends all around send a signal to the Nigerian judiciary that they're also having more than a passive interest in how things are done here.
We appreciate your time, Segun. Thank you so much. Segun Showomi, spokesperson for Atiku Abubakar there. And my colleague Blessed Sugan, thankfully, stayed with me on this. Tell us a bit more about what the general talk in town is, Blessed. Maybe then you can tell me what you've been eating so far in Abuja.
I haven't tried the Nigerian jollof yet, but I hope
please don't. Stay away from it.
But anyway, the talk of town has been about the fight. You don't want to call it a fight, but the confrontation between leadership of the Labour Party today in court. It was really something fascinating to watch, whilst keeping the seriousness of the matters at stake, because you would expect that Peter Obi would want to keep a united front, a solid front, even as they make their march towards becoming a solid third force in Nigeria. But given what's happening and why, as to why we're seeing this division, we're not too sure about it. We'll continue to investigate, but it appears that it's simply a case of power play, where the chairperson wants the lawyers of Peter Obi to account directly to him. The others feel that no, the processes towards that should be handled differently. So that's been the problem. But ultimately, we need to be paying attention to the next steps. The court has 180 days to decide on the matter. That 180 days would definitely exceed the swearing in time frame for Bola Tinubu. And that's why many are also in court asking that the swearing in be put on hold. So we will watch that space and bring you an update. Hopefully, if we get a word from Professor Mahmoud tomorrow, he happens to be the chairperson of the INEC, we'll definitely bring that to our viewers. But trust Joy News, your election headquarters, to give you a 360 view of what's happening here in Nigeria. And
I'm sure you've been working with your desk to get government reaction to this particular request. But as and when we do, we can bring that subsequently. Thank you very much. Blessed Suga is our foreign affairs correspondent reporting live from Abuja, Nigeria. It's a good time to take a quick break here on Joy News Prime. And that's it for tonight's edition of Joy News Prime. There's more when you log on to myjoyonline.com. I am Emefa Apawu. And you are?
I am Becky. I want everybody to stay tuned for PM Express tonight, because Stoneboy will be on later.
But we'll start off from the Supreme Court, just give you updates, and then we'll bring you that big interview. Stay for it.